No Time to Die is the latest film in the James Bond franchise, directed by Cary Fukunaga, best known for his incredible work with the first season of True Detective, which to this day I'm still a big fan of. This new film is Daniel Craig's final turn as 007, having gained a license to kill in 2006 with the all-time classic James Bond film, Casino Royale, meaning it's been some time since we've had the role of James Bond passed on to a new face. Although I grew up in the age of Pierce Brosnan's Bond, especially with GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64, it is Daniel Craig's James Bond that I've experienced most at the cinemas. So there's definitely a bittersweet feeling seeing the curtains close on Daniel Craig's portrayal of the character. And before we go any further, since the film has been out for some time around the world and is only just hitting Australian cinemas, there will be spoilers within this review. Finally, getting to see No Time to Die was absolutely a worthy experience, so if you don't want No Time to Die spoiled or you simply don't care, see the movie first and come back, or just carry on with the video. No Time to Die sees a retired Bond called back into action, with MI6's new 007 to retrieve Project Heracles, a bioweapon originally in the hands of MI6, containing nanobots that can be programmed to kill a specific target using their DNA, which this movie's villain Safin, played by Rami Malek, is planning to use to wipe out much of the world's population in an act of essentially playing God. And judging by that description, you'd have been expecting a fairly standard Bond experience from the get-go. James Bond saves the day, gets the Bond girl, happily ever after. And in some ways, No Time to Die has the spirit of that formula. Unlike the previous two entries, Skyfall and Spectre, there's a playful attempt at capturing some of the fun of earlier Bond movies, rather than focusing solely on trying to deconstruct the James Bond character. Instead, No Time to Die does something pretty bold in A, giving James Bond a daughter, and B, actually killing off James Bond. Quite definitively closing the chapter for Daniel Craig's run as the character, which has seen a consistent continuity since Casino Royale. And I'm not going to lie, I was pretty shocked that Cary Fukunaga, and especially the folks over at Eon Productions, actually carried through with breaking the Bond formula in such an impactful way. A way that actually moved me, and maybe even irritated me just a little bit. It is clear watching No Time to Die that everyone involved really wanted to have Bond be in his full glory. For a number of years now, we've had these films trying to get to the core of James Bond as a character. How did he become so ruthless? How is the myth of James Bond tweaked by the different people who tell his story? And there's certainly some of that here. Bond is a lot more cold-hearted here than he's been in the films for some time, harkening back more so to Ian Fleming's original conception of the character. And now, given the context of where James Bond's journey ends in this film, it makes sense. If we're not going to commit to a full deconstruction of James Bond, then why not confront the character with how his work as 007 is any different from that of a mass murderer? But at the same time, we have a Bond here who is as confident and charming as always, but with a bit more of the wit and fun that the character was known for in earlier films. And a lot of that comes down to the great Phoebe Waller-Bridge adapting the character for a modern audience, writing him without dumbing the character down or losing what makes James Bond fun to be around. James Bond is not the reluctant hero that he was in Skyfall here. Instead, he's jumping into action, making those one-liners that everyone either loves or derides. He's using those over-the-top gadgets like machine guns hidden behind the headlights of his Aston Martin. A lot of the famous James Bond elements are here, without being made fun of, which is pretty key. This definitely all helps, because No Time to Die is pretty long for even James Bond standards, clocking in at over 160 minutes. While a lot of that runtime can get lost in relaying the intricate web of espionage to the audience, and some fantastic action sequences filmed in IMAX, most importantly we're given plenty of time to see the bond between James and Madeleine Swan develop over the course of the film, in order to make that ending more impactful. The two of them are gradually able to trust each other over Madeleine's past connections with Spectre, and eventually try to do what's best for their daughter. We haven't had this much dimension to Bond and a Bond girl since at least Casino Royale, but probably even more so since On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And it's thanks to Daniel Craig and Lea Seydoux for giving a lot of love and energy to these characters and making them work amongst all the crazier elements in the film. Lashana Lynch adds a very welcome curveball to the James Bond formula, being introduced as Naomie, the new 007 recruited during James Bond's retirement, allowing for some fun interactions while also giving Bond a chance to earn his 00 status once again, rather than just being handed the title. Lashana Lynch gets sidelined maybe a little bit more than the marketing wanted to let on, but every scene between Naomie and James Bond added some much welcome banter between the two, putting James Bond in his place when needed. And although she's not in the movie a whole lot, I actually thought Ana de Armas was fantastic as the bubbly Paloma, allowing James Bond to take on more of a mentor role than we're used to really seeing. I'd have been more than happy to see just an adventure between those two, and if Eon ever wants to spin off some of its characters, I'd be all about a Paloma standalone standalone film. It would just be bizarre to have this fun new character show up briefly, to then presumably never return if the next James Bond film completely reboots all of the characters. Unfortunately, the villain Fiennes is a bit of a sour point, who appears briefly in the opening before being absent for a good chunk of the film, eventually revealing himself to be a fairly forgettable foe for James Bond to interact with. There are some believable motivations for Fiennes in wanting to get revenge on Spectre for the murder of his family, or in punishing MI6 for the creation of Project Heracles. But once those conflicts come and go, it becomes a bit more unclear and unfocused as to what Fiennes is actually trying to achieve outside of just having a god complex. The eventual confrontation between Fiennes and James Bond, while entertaining to watch, just falls short of having much to say, like Sean Bean's Alec Trevelyan having personal stakes against England in GoldenEye. In fact, I honestly found the interaction between James Bond and Blofeld in No Time to Die far more compelling than what we see with Fiennes. Rami Malek and Christoph Waltz are both Academy Award winning actors, but the way the characters are written and their dynamics with James Bond clearly end up in the favour of Blofeld. As mentioned earlier, this is a Bond film aiming to capture James Bond in all of his glory, and that's more than evident in the movie's action scenes. From the phenomenal bridge set piece in Matera, the big shootout in Cuba, and the phenomenal unbroken one-shot sequence in the film's final act. Continuing the recent tradition of having standout one-take action scenes in hallways, allowing for Daniel Craig to pull off some fantastically choreographed stunts. Cinematographer Linus Sengren nails the look of many of these sequences as well, opting for a more vibrant look than the past couple James Bond films. I also think Hans Zimmer did a pretty decent job with the score as well, even though the most memorable moments come from homages or retoolings of John Barry's iconic soundtracks. Although I can't say I was a huge fan of Billie Eilish's theme for the movie, the mood kind of fits the direction of the film, but it just lacks a lot of the energy of previous Bond themes. Chris Cornell's You Know My Name still reigns supreme for me personally. No Time to Die is an overlong but fitting send-off to Daniel Craig's time as James Bond, packing a bit too much into a film that probably could have been 20 minutes shorter. There's clearly a lot of love here for the legacy of James Bond, capturing the fun of earlier James Bond films, like referencing specific elements from previous adventures, like one of the minor villains Obrychev being a clear homage to Alan Cummings' character from GoldenEye. There will definitely be times re-watching No Time to Die where I'll probably have preferred that James Bond walked off into the sunset, but I'm still glad that this is the ending that we got. And for what it's worth, I'd still rank Casino Royale and Skyfall above this. It is going to be very interesting to see what the future holds for the James Bond franchise, with some big shoes to fill for whoever takes on the role next. No Time to Die gets a 7.5 out of 10 from me. Guys, I hope you like this review. If you want to see more reviews just like this one, stay right here for your mono fix. Bye guys.